Thank you, Betty. I'm going to ask for the lights to come down, thank you, Sarah. Ooh, that did come down. And can I be heard? Okay, I'm being broadcast. Wonderful. All right, well, for those of you that don't know Reverend Janet, I served as the lead pastor here at St. Luke's from 2004 to 2016. So I've almost been retired almost a decade. That does not seem possible. But I was telling one table that when you're working, you don't have time to pursue all these bunny trails. But when you're retired and you get interested in something, you can just have all this fun and do all this research. And that's how my passion for Mary Magdalene grew. The recording will be available, so I'm going to invite you just to enjoy the mystery and the clues that I'm going to share, and then if you want to take notes later, Renee reminded me that she took notes last time and she should have just enjoyed. So just enjoy. This is a bit provocative and fun for the Bible, so just enjoy. One of my first classes in seminary was entitled The Feminist Reading of the Bible. I felt quietly revolutionary. During the course, my curiosity grew by reading behind the words of the scripture. I was taught to recognize bias. I began to imagine what might have been omitted. And since that time, I have attended to the women in our tradition whose stories have been distorted or lost or discarded. Tonight, I want to look underneath and around the corners of the Magdalene mystery, asking the question, what would Christianity be like if Mary Magdalene hadn't been hidden from view? So when did my interest in Mary Magdalene begin? When I was 16. I was 16 and I played the part of Mary Magdalene in a Good Friday production at church. Jesus had been crucified and buried, and in a deposition-style grilling, I was to testify to the claim that Jesus was the Messiah, the Christ, the Son of God. So during my questioning, I had a vision of Jesus sitting at the defendant's table. So in that lovely adolescent romantic ether, Jesus appeared to me. Ever since then, I have been passionate and curious about this woman's story because that moment impressed on me, you can imagine, at 16. So I want to invite you to have a little conversation around your table. Spend a few minutes with this question. What do you know about Mary Magdalene, either from the Bible or from popular culture, like music, books, or theater? And I will bring us back together with a song by Chris Christopherson called The Magdalene. So brainstorm a little together, just a few minutes. What do you know about Mary Magdalene? Well, I suspect that something that came up at most of your tables is that you know the image of Mary Magdalene, the prostitute. Did that come up? Yes, that's the mythology about her. Well, at a concert in Austin, Texas, Chris Christopherson sang this song, The Magdalene, from his 1981 album, To the Bone. To introduce the song, he said, "This is a song about a wicked girl who was saved by Jesus Christ." Now, why did Christopherson think Mary Magdalene was wicked? Who framed Mary Magdalene? Okay, come on. Come on, we don't want to stay with you all night, Chris. Point it over there. Okay, it's coming. You checking it out, Sarah? There he is. Meet Pope Gregory the Great. In his Good Friday sermon in the year 591, Pope Gregory conflated, joined, or merged Mary Magdalene with the unnamed sinful woman in Luke 7, wrongfully establishing her 1,500-year reputation as a reformed harlot. Oh, this way. Come on. Oh, now this is the best picture ever. We got to get to this one. There she is. Many scandalous images, usually depicted red-haired and sensual, though... That's the laser, that one? Yeah, that's what I was... Okay, I'll try it again. Good. Many scandalous images, and always red-haired and sensual, though lacking any biblical basis at all. This became the dominant image in Western Christianity until it was officially cleared up by the Vatican in 1969, refocusing her identity as a disciple and witness to the resurrection. I always wondered if those are hair extensions. In 2016, Pope Francis elevated her, naming her the Apostle to the Apostles. Now, there are other impressions, I'm sure, that came up about Mary Magdalene from culture. The wife of Jesus in Dan Brown's The Da Vinci Code. His girlfriend in the musical Jesus Christ Superstar. A key teacher and symbolic red rose in the divine feminine movement. A key figure in the Gospel of Mary from the year 150, a Gnostic writing about about her, but not written by her. And the biblical references, she was a woman of means, which Jesus healed and she anointed. She was a disciple who followed Jesus, the first witness to the resurrection, and an apostle sent with good news. Indeed, many people have been curious about her story, and we can return to some of these references later if you choose. But tonight, we're going to explore the Magdalene mystery through two Bible stories. First, the familiar story from Luke chapter 10, verses 38 to 42. Now, as they went on their way, Jesus entered a certain village where a woman named Martha welcomed him into her home. She had a sister named Mary who sat at the Lord's feet and listened to what he was saying. But Martha was distracted by her many tasks. So she came to him and asked, "Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to do all the work by myself? Tell her to help me." But the Lord answered her, "Martha, Martha, you are worried and distracted by many things. There is need for only one thing. Mary has chosen the better part, which will not be taken from her." So this is Luke's beloved account of Jesus with two sisters, busy Martha and contemplative Mary. And what could be the message here is the invitation to what Jesus calls the better part. Mary is sitting at Jesus' feet, receiving his teachings. Thus, we have the story of Martha the doer and Mary the listener, and Jesus saying, Mary has chosen the better part. So why do I start the Magdalene mystery with this story from Luke 10? Oh, there she is. Because Dr. Diana Butler Bass, the church historian, provided the connection for me in her 2022 sermon entitled All the Marys. Diana was a primary scholar for me in my doctoral dissertation, and I subscribe to her Substack platform called The Cottage. I read everything she writes. In this sermon, she tells the story about her daughter Emma that is very similar to the experience of my niece Emma, thus the tickler for me. Emma Caitlin Forbes was born in 1990. My sister-in-law liked the name Emma. She wanted a name that couldn't be shortened. My brother wanted the name Kate, so our mother suggested Caitlin as the middle name, which echoed my middle name, Lynn. Oh, and Aunt Janet just loved that. Emma Caitlin Forbes. What my family or the Bass family didn't know was that Emma would wind up being the second most popular girl's name in the decade of the 2000s. Here at age 11, there are Emmas everywhere. In Putnam Valley, New York, in her 6th grade class, there were 3 Emmas. That year, she would be known as Emma Kate, as opposed to Emma Lee or Emma Grace. My niece's parents would get wrong report cards. They would get wrong assignments for her. People would talk about Emma, and they would say, oh, Emma did such and such, and it was, well, which Emma? Which Emma are you talking about? And that's exactly, that's exactly what this text today should take us. When we hear the story of busy Martha and contemplative Mary, a question that we might not think to ask, but one that we should ask is, which Mary? Which Mary is this? You might think you know. Indeed, for many years, I thought I knew. I have preached any number of sermons on how this Mary and Martha story is related to another story, a story in John 11, a story about Mary and Martha, the sisters of Lazarus, who live in a place called Bethany. And indeed, if you go to many commentaries on this Luke passage, these commentaries begin by saying, this is the story of Mary and Martha, the sisters of Lazarus, Mary and Martha of Bethany. But if you actually look at the Bible, which might be a good idea, especially for someone who is writing a commentary, you will see that the words in Bethany are never mentioned in Luke's text. Indeed, if you look at a map, Bethany is actually down south. There's Jerusalem, Bethlehem, and Bethany, right there. If you look at a map, Bethany is down south near Jerusalem. However, in this story, Jesus is traveling throughout the Galilee, which is 90 miles to the north. All Luke says is that Mary and Martha were from a certain village, probably somewhere near the Sea of Galilee. Also, in the Luke story, there's this curious identification of Martha where it says, Martha welcomed him, Jesus, into her home. Now, what's curious about that phrase is that Mary and Martha are sisters in a patriarchal society. If they'd had a brother, that line would say, and Martha welcomed Jesus into her brother's home, because Martha doesn't own a home. Diana Butler Bass says it this way, it's not Martha's home unless it is Martha's home. The only way it is Martha's home is if Martha has no husband, no father, and no brother. Many readers conflate or join together or merge Luke 10 with John 11, where there are two sisters named Mary and Martha, and they have a brother named Lazarus, and they do live in a place called Bethany. But if it is the same family, Luke 10 is confused. The village is in the wrong place, and it's not named correctly. What we actually have is two stories that our imaginations have run together, which our Bible story tradition has run together, which even commentaries have run together. These are actually two different stories about two different families. This is as if the kids came home from school and said, Emma Kate did this or that, and it was actually Emma Grace. It becomes a problem when you get the cast of characters wrong by forcing Bible stories together. Now that you recognize the separateness of these stories, I want to turn to the second passage, this often merged text of John 11. So later on, when I talk about taking Martha out, I'm not talking about taking it out of Luke 10. It's so funny. If you listen to Diana Butler Bass's sermon, All the Marys, and she says, you know, we just might have to take Martha out. The whole place erupts. Don't take my Martha! I think women especially like dishwashing Martha, don't you? Okay, these are two different stories, and we're gonna focus on the sisters of Lazarus, the story from John 11. Did I go one back? Let me see. Second patch is merged, let me see. Okay. Okay. I know what I wanted to go. All right, here we go. I wanted to say that John 11 opens with a very simple sentence. Now, a certain man was ill, Lazarus of Bethany. And so it's clearly defined, Bethany, not a certain village in the Galilee. The village of Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. Now, here we are. On my first visit to the Holy Land, our tour took us to Bethany, just 2 miles south of Jerusalem. This is the excavated first-century tomb traditionally known as the first burial site of Lazarus, who died from his illness. Our group got out of the bus, read John 11 about Jesus raising Lazarus, and enjoyed some neighborhood children. And one little entrepreneur took a stone and put it in this sling that his mother had woven, and just like David slaying Goliath, he flung that stone, and then he sold one of these to every one of us. An entire busload. That man went home. That little man went home with some money. So since my visit to Bethany and this street and all those laughing children, I have loved this Bible story. But until recently, I had no idea what had been hidden from me. This is Elizabeth Schrader Polzer, who now serves as assistant professor of New Testament and early Christianity at Villanova University near Philadelphia. Just 15 years ago, Libby, as she is known, was a singer-songwriter living in New York City. One day, seeking refuge from the busy city, she walked into a church garden to pray. And as she prayed, she heard a voice that said, "Maybe you should talk to Mary Magdalene about that. Follow Mary Magdalene." So in response to that prayer, Libby wrote a song, which she called Magdalene. But something was nagging her to learn more about this woman. So she enrolled in seminary to earn a master's degree in New Testament. She learned Greek and Coptic and Aramaic in order to read the text in its earliest forms. And for her final master's thesis, she decided to write about John 11 and Mary of Bethany's suspected link to Mary Magdalene. The first sentence of John 11 in our English Bibles reads like this. In our regular Bibles. "Now a certain man was ill, Lazarus of Bethany, the village of Mary, and her sister Martha." Now remember, that's what your Bible currently says. Then Libby looked at Papyrus 66, which is the oldest and most complete text that we have of the Gospel of John. It is dated around the year 200. We think John was actually written in around the year 125. This is the oldest text from the year 200 that we currently still have. The text had been recently digitized, increasing its accessibility to a young student like Libby. So Libby read the first sentence of John 11 in Greek. From Papyrus 66, the Greek text reads, "Now a certain man was ill, Lazarus of Bethany, at the village of Mary and his sister Mary." Startled, she exclaimed, "That's not what my English Bible says." So the second version from the New Revised Standard Version reads, "Now a certain man was ill, Lazarus of Bethany, the village of Mary, and her sister Martha." But the Greek text, the oldest Greek text, doesn't say that. The Greek text reads, "Now a certain man was ill, Lazarus of Bethany, at the village of Mary and his sister Mary." There are two Marys in this verse. And Libby wondered, what is going on here? So she began digging into the text. zooming in to see what she could see on the digitized version. Libby noticed that in the text where it had the two Marys, the village of Mary and her sister Mary, the text had actually been changed. Notice the red underline there. Can you see where there has been an erasure and a new letter has been inserted above the line of text? In Greek, Mary is spelled like Maria in English. By changing the letter I, iota, to the letter th, theta, the second Mary becomes Martha. Libby could see that the iota had been erased and changed to a theta. Someone, at some point in time, had gone in over the original handwriting and actually changed that second Mary to Martha. Not only had the person changed the second Mary to Martha, but that person had also changed the possessive pronouns, changing his sister to her sister. Someone had changed it to read Mary and her sister Martha. Libby sat in the library with all this, and it came thundering at her, the realization that at some time, probably in that 75-year gap, an editor had altered the oldest text that we currently have of the Gospel of John. They split the character Mary into two women. Mary became Mary and Martha. She went through both chapters, John 11 and 12, and to her amazement, every time you read Martha in your English Bible, it had originally read Mary. Every pronoun is changed from his sister to her sister. Every singular sister is changed to the plural sisters. The editor changed it all. And we've been telling the story wrong ever since. I'm going to get to that. Now, at this point, great question. Why would they do that? I always have to take this kind of big, steadying breath at this point in the mystery. So I kind of want to monitor your reaction to this news. Don't vote yet, okay? But just think about your response. If you knew about these textual changes in John 11 and have already kind of considered the ramifications, hold up a 1, you old Bible scholar, you. If you feel the foundations of the earth tremble at the ramifications of this change, hold up 5 fingers. If you're kind of blown away or even shocked and have yet to think about the so what, hold up 10 fingers. Okay, vote now. Okay, good. All right, I know we have a Bible scholar over here from Stephen, because he reads his Bible in the Greek every day? Plus. Libby's thesis proved that someone had been fiddling around with the original text of the Gospel of John. So, now she's a master's degree student, okay? When the Harvard Theological Review published her findings, other scholars noticed. She was invited to meet with the official translation committee of the Greek New Testament in Germany. These biblical guardians provide all scholars and publishers with the closest language to the original manuscripts as possible. This is my copy. Stephen brought his. After several days reviewing her research, the committee said, "We might have to change something here." Today, the debate continues as to whether or not Libby's research will turn into a long footnote that all of us will be reading in the next updated edition of the New Revised Standard Version, or will the committee actually change John 11 and take Martha out? That was an uproar when it was first heard. But there is further evidence to do so. I knew that. I was going to go too far. Around the year 200, Tertullian, an early church theologian, wrote a commentary on the Gospel of John. Commenting on this chapter, John 11, he said, Mary confessing Jesus to be the Son of God. Now, wait a second. In my Bible, it says that Martha confessed that. So, let's take a look at those verses. When Jesus arrived, he found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb 4 days. Now, Bethany was near Jerusalem, some 2 miles away, and many of the Jews had come to Martha and Mary to console them about their brother. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went and met him, while Mary stayed at home. Martha said to Jesus, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But even now I know that God will give you whatever you ask of him." And Jesus said to her, "Your brother will rise again." Martha said to him, "I know that he will rise again in the resurrection on the last day." Jesus said to her, "I am the resurrection and the life. Those who believe in me, even though they die, will live. And everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this?" Martha said to him, "Yes, Lord, I believe you are the Messiah, the Son of God, the one coming into the world." But Tertullian said that the confessing sister was Mary. There was no Martha in this chapter, according to Tertullian. Did Tertullian's copy of John include only Mary? In his commentary, Tertullian said that Mary gives what is called the Christological confession. Now, this is the big word for the night. This is what you take home and impress your neighbors with. The Christological confession, which is, you are the Messiah, the Son of God. And Tertullian said that Mary was the one who gave the Christological confession. Additionally, he said in the Gospel of John, Mary anoints Jesus. Mary's at the foot of the cross on Good Friday. Mary goes alone to the empty tomb on Easter morning, where Jesus appears to her first. Mary gets the first commission of the risen Jesus to go to the disciples and announce the good news. Mary is the first messenger, the first apostle. All of this makes her a central character in the Gospel of John. It also makes her perhaps a threatening character, because this Christological confession in John is quite similar to Peter's confession in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. So let's listen to Peter. He, Jesus, said to the disciples, "But who do you say that I am?" And Simon Peter answered, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God." Peter derives his authority from being the first to confess that Jesus is the Messiah, the Christ. But if John crafted a gospel where the Christological confessor is also the first person that the risen Jesus appears to, that's a problem. That could make Mary a competitor for the authority that Peter ended up getting. But if you put Martha in there, the problem is solved. Now the person who confesses that Jesus is the Christ is a forgettable minor character who doesn't show up again. It would make sense to kind of diminish the story. It would make the gospel more palatable, more acceptable. And did you catch this little moment in the story? Martha hears that Jesus is coming, and so she runs out to meet him, while Mary is so upset that she stays home. Notice that Mary is literally hidden from view. Now, another clue to the mystery is from Saint Egeria, a 4th century pilgrim to the Holy Land, who visits Lazarus' tomb in Bethany, that same street in Bethany. In her diary, she writes, "This is the place where Mary, the sister of Lazarus, ran out to meet the Lord." Egeria's diary doesn't mention Martha. Tertullian doesn't mention Martha. Indeed, in these ancient sources, the story is the story of Mary. All right, Mary, come on. There she, oh, shoot. Excuse me, Mary. I wanted to go back. Oh. Well, you've seen that picture with the egg before, so click, there she is. All right. Here we go. Our scholar, Libby, Elizabeth Schrader Pulitzer, is suggesting that John 11 is about Lazarus and his one sister, Mary. Recently, just within a few months, this theory has been named. It has been called the single sister hypothesis. AI told me that yesterday. The single sister hypothesis. So if this is so, why did this editor split Mary into 2 women? Well, maybe this guy, and sorry, gents, because I'm sure it was a guy, he didn't like John's Greek, so he fixed it in a way that made sense to him. Or maybe he was worried about how this story didn't fit with Luke's story, about Mary and Martha. Maybe he was trying to conflate or join together or merge those 2 stories that are actually about different families. Maybe he had benign motives. Or not. John 11 is one of the 2 Christological confessions in the gospel. One confession happens in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. By whom? Peter, exactly. Jesus says, "Who do you say that I am?" Peter says, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God." And Jesus turns around and says to him, "You are Peter. Upon this rock I will build my church." Indeed, the Holy See of Rome was established by Peter in the mid-1st century. Peter is considered the first bishop of Rome, laying the foundation for the papacy. The other Christological confession is in the Gospel of John, and until this point, it has belonged to a minor character named Martha. Jesus raises her brother from the dead, and they have this conversation. Finally, this woman says, "Yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God, the one who is coming into the world." Pretty much the same words that Peter says in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And then Martha disappears from history, unimportant and unremembered. But if it is Mary, down button? No, that was the up button. Come on. I'm using the big one in the middle. There we go, okay. I want her, the one where she's teaching the apostles. Oh. Back up, there we go. But if it is Mary, the Mary who shows up in John 11 is not an unremembered Mary, not just one of the plethora of Marys in the 6th grade class. Since the 3rd century, this Mary of Bethany is suspected to be Mary Magdalene. Is Libby asserting that the other Christological confession of the New Testament comes from the voice of Mary Magdalene? John gives the most important statement not to a man, but to a woman, and to the woman who will show up as the first witness to the resurrection. And Libby asserts it is Mary Magdalene. Now, there's just one more clue to this mystery. Come on, I want my map. All right. One more clue. When I visited the Holy Land with St. Luke's in 2014, I asked our faculty, Reverend Peter Miano, if we could visit the town of Magdala. Right there, right on the Sea of Galilee. If we could visit the town of Magdala, the home of Mary Magdalene, since we were touring around the Sea of Galilee. And he said, "Janet, there is a debate going on now in New Testament studies about where Mary Magdalene is actually from. However, she wasn't from the town of Magdala, which in the 1st century was not named Magdala, but was known as Tarakii, named for the industry of curing fish from the Sea of Galilee. The town has now become a bit of a trap to lure tourists to the village. It's a lovely town with a lovely church," he said, "but not authentic to Mary Magdalene." So we didn't visit Magdala, and I'm glad, because Libby and other scholars are asserting that Magdala or Magdalene is not a place, but a title, an honorific, a nickname. Like Simon, who became Peter, which means rock. Like James and John, the sons of Zebedee, who became the sons of thunder. And like Mary, the Magdala in Aramaic, which means the tower. Like Mary Magdalene, meaning the toweress. And now, if we can get this next slide up, we have the full mystery. Come on. You have the full picture. This is the tower of Mary Magdalene, the Tower S, in Budapest. In the first 3 gospel accounts, Simon, called Simon Peter, utters the Christological confession. As a result, Jesus says, "You are Peter the rock." In the Gospel of John, Mary utters the Christological confession, and she becomes known as Mary the Tower. Peter the Rock, Mary the Tower. But the John account was changed. The John story has been hidden from view. What if Mary, in John 11, hadn't been split into two women? What if we'd known about Mary the Tower all along? What kind of Christianity would we have if the faith hadn't only been based on Peter, you are the rock, and upon this rock I will build my church? What if we had always known, Mary, you are the tower, and by this tower we shall all stand? This icon of Mary Magdalene holds an egg, the symbol of Easter, the symbol of resurrection, the symbol of new life. So I invite you to kind of imagine the new life that is before us because of this new scholarship. What would Christianity be like if we had known about Mary the Tower? What are your thoughts? What are your imaginings? What do you see immediately?
It would have delegitimized the entire foundation of the Roman Catholic Church.
Ooh! Just for starters, yes. Did you hear that? Delegitimized the Catholic Church. The interesting piece, when I said about taking Martha out, Martha is a saint in the Catholic Church. And if you read about her, it conflates Luke 10 and John 11 in the story about Saint Martha. So, yes. Okay, that's the first thing. What else? Terry.
I see how, changing those two words, changing Mary, Martha to Mary, but the rest of the sentence doesn't make sense then.
About this.
It would say it said something about Mary and Martha. So you have Mary and Mary.
Yes, and you'll have to do more research about, because it was a way of not only saying it was Lazarus' sister, but that Mary was of Bethany as well. And so that's what that meant. It didn't mean there were two Marys. Yeah. Libby has gone back and read about 200 versions of the Old, and she has completely rewritten the first 5 verses of John 11, and you can find that online. And she's used not only Papyrus 66, but some of the other earlier versions of John into what she supposes it said. Her gig, she's what's called a textual critic. Textual criticism, trying to build underneath the scripture and around the corners. And so she makes that explanation. Yeah, you think you have two Marys, but what it meant was that there was Mary, the sister of Lazarus, and Mary of Bethany. Same Mary. Yes, Steve. Yeah, there are lots of towers of Mary. I just couldn't find a picture of a good one. I doubt it. I doubt it. There's a lot of stuff on the internet now about resurrecting Mary the Tower. And some people talk about, especially the divine feminine movement, that sees Mary Magdalene as a key teacher. They talk about not only being the tower, but the beacon, the lighthouse, different images. We don't have any record that Jesus named her Mary the Tower, as we do have Peter the Rock. But Magdala in Aramaic means tower. So instead of Mary of Magdala, Mary the Magdala, or Mary Magdalene the Toweress. But that is, yeah, there are Mary and Magdalene towers. There's a lovely tower in Magdala that I'm sure they built with that beautiful church that is not her hometown. You know, and neither is Budapest, her hometown. But that is the Church of Mary Magdalene, and it has a huge tower. I didn't do the research, enough of the research to know whether that was intentional as Mary the Tower. But there are lots of towers in churches named after her. Oh, yes. Yeah, that's a part of the myth. That's why we started with all that cultural, popular culture stuff, because she has become such a mythological character. And that she's Jesus' wife, and that she's Jesus, and that, you know, she's buried, and the red rose, and all of that stuff. She is highly popular. But trying to debunk the prostitute and find out what we possibly can of getting as close to the original manuscripts as we can.
What about the shadow in the Lord's Supper?
The shadow, that's another one. The shadow in the Lord's Supper, have you seen about that? That at the Da Vinci Lord's Supper, there's a shadow right behind Jesus to his left. And you can go on the internet and find Mary Magdalene in the Da Vinci Last Supper, and they'll show you that shadow. There'll be a picture of it. That some believe that the beloved disciple was Mary in the Da Vinci. So there's just...
Your research, take it up, like, have they...
No, Libby, this scholar, is biblical. She is working on old texts. And yeah, she's a very winsome woman, and she's delightful to hear. And I'm going to recommend getting to hear her voice as she talks about this first discovery and how it just sort of blew up. I mean, she's in her 30s. Maybe she's older now, but she had to be in her early 30s, late 20s, early 30s when she first discovered this. Mind-blowing, yeah. How soon would we have been ordaining women?
Earlier.
Quite a bit earlier. Yeah, Liza and I did a high five after this one. Yes, we wouldn't have had to fight so hard for that tradition.
I remember something you said years ago that there were no Catholic women as priests because they didn't have the right plumbing.
They don't have the right plumbing, right. So this gives somebody who has better plumbing, at least we have equality, we have balance. I read an article today that actually Sharon Oliver sent me an influencer video that he talks about restoring balance, restoring harmony, the egalitarian vision of restoring the garden, the broken garden where Eve gets blamed. Here is the co-equal partnership. There is at least more plumbing than what Peter had. Yeah, for women to be priests in the Catholic Church. Yes?
Just to go back to his first comment about it kind of annihilates the Roman Catholic Church. Doesn't it actually annihilate Christianity if you follow it that way? Because there were no denominations non-Roman Catholic at the time. But also, isn't it more likely that it's a reflection of patriarchal society?
Yes.
And so
Yeah, whether or not Mary the Tower ever had a chance. I think that's what you're saying. Yeah, whether or not, I'd like to think the scribes' motives were benign, but I know enough about patriarchal in the Bible, and I know how to read underneath the scripture now, and to find how the women who were leaders in the Bible, the text diminishes their leadership. Men are called one thing, and when a woman does the same thing, it's called something different. And that happens throughout the scriptures, doesn't it, Dwayne? So whether Mary would have survived, but whether that will change anything in the future,
I have a question about the time frame. I seem to remember in my dim dark past that John was written somewhat later than the first three Gospels. Is that true?
yes, first three Gospels were in the first century, and this one about 125, they think.
Could that be why his writing was a different story?
Clearly, it is a different story and a different central character. And it reflects the John community differently than it reflects the gospel community of Matthew and Mark and Luke and who their audience was. John's community was different later. But clearly, Mary is central, and all of them have her as the first resurrection witness. Some of them don't let her go tell the others. But she is the first witness. So John picked up on that component for sure and elevated Mary's position. If this is so. And again, we don't have the answers. We don't know, and Libby will say, we may never know. And the Greek New Testament committee in Germany may never have enough evidence to take Martha out of John 11. The women visited the tomb, but Mary, if you remember, John 20 is the one who goes to the garden, and she doesn't recognize him. She's by herself. She says, "Oh, you're the gardener. Where did you take him?" And he says, "Mary." And she says, Rabboni, Rabbi. Yes.
You know, this is all fascinating, and, I enjoy being here, but I think, in my own personal opinion, when people pick the Bible to death, whether it be Mary Magdalene or Martha or whatever the situation is, when we sit there and pick at the Bible, I feel like we are questioning that Jesus Christ is our Lord and Savior. I think he looks at us like, hey, I am the man, I am your Savior, I am the reason and the light, okay? And then when we pick the death out of the Bible, and, some of this is very good, but I just think we are shaming Jesus.
Well, what I think is exciting and that I want you to hear is that the Christological confession is solid. That comes from both the voice of Peter and supposedly Mary or Martha, whoever it was. The Messiah, the Christ, the Son of God, the one who is coming into the world.
And then when people sit there and pick the Bible to death and they say, oh, the Bible was written by a man and da-da-da-da, then we're starting to doubt, and we should never doubt.
We don't doubt in our Bible study.
Yeah. 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 One of the things that I said when I served here, and Caleb and Liza may now know, is that St. Luke's is a question church. It's not an answer church, because we're a church of skeptics. And a lot of folks who had left Christianity find a place and a story again, and they find Jesus again. At St. Luke's, yeah. So, yeah, I don't want us to get to doubt Jesus, but even if you read the footnotes in your current Bible, you'll be invited to question. Yeah, and that always drives me crazy when I would teach, because I'd want to read all the footnotes, and then I go crazy, and I just think, well, let's just go with a New Revised Standard Version here. Okay, I saw. Is what? Later. Yes, it's later.
And so it would appear that if the corrections that you identified are embraced, then we have a later congregation at the very least who's been enthralled with the idea of a woman being a part of the story. But, to finish my chronological point, another 100 years later, when Constantine calls Nicaea, it's all gone.
Yeah, none of this made it to the councils. Yeah, our canon was established by those councils. But I know St. Luke's loves to study the non-canonical Gospels. The Gospel of Philip, and the Gospel of Peter, and the Gospel of Mary, and the Gospel of Thomas, and I know our Bible studies loves to look at the ones that didn't get into the Bible. And a lot of them Gnostic, from different, and they're about special revelation. That's what the Gospel of Mary is about, that she got special revelations, inner revelations from Jesus, the resurrected Jesus. So, you can tell right away why that didn't get in, because she wasn't talking about sin and salvation, which is what got in. So, yeah. It's about time we, let me just go to my last one here. These internet links are available to you on these little papers I have as you leave. I've got 2 connections here where you can hear the voices of these 2 scholars. To hear more from Dr. Diana Butler Bass, and actually to hear her sermon, All the Marys, you can search that. Or to hear more from Libby, Dr. Elizabeth Schrader-Polzer, she did a wonderful podcast with the Bible for Normal People, Peter Enns. I think some of us use those in our Bible studies. Episode 245 from May 15, 2023. It's a lovely conversation in her own voice about her discoveries and where she thinks this might go. And it's interesting, just recently, John 11 came up in the lectionary, and a lot of preachers will preach on this lectionary. Do you know what the lectionary is? It's a passage where through 3 years you can read through the whole Bible and preach through the whole Bible. Well, John 11 came up, and a lot of people who've been following her wrote to her and said, what do we do now that we have to preach John 11 and you say that Martha wasn't there? And so she did this very pastoral response to preachers who were preaching John 11, and it was just gracious. And she said, it's exciting and it's provocative that women, that Mary can elevate the place of women in a patriarchal society, but you gotta love Peter, because Peter has been our guide. So this is not Peter's fault. You gotta love Peter if you're gonna love Mary. And I thought, what a gracious thing, because that's what to me it's about, is a sense of balance. that Jesus loves women and elevates women to leadership. Jesus loves men. Peter elevates Peter and men to leadership. Harmony and balance. So I invite you especially to listen to Libby's voice on this podcast. So we don't have all the answers. And we don't have all the answers to this mystery. It continues as a mystery. We are reading underneath and around the corners of our sacred texts, and I appreciate the word picking at. I appreciate that. But what I do know is that all of this matters, because I stand a bit taller because I'm in the company of this woman. So I want to thank the United Women of Faith who first received this presentation in February, and thank you to Betty Ludlam and her team for the original invitation to scratch this lifelong itch from the time I was 16, and thanks to all of you for coming to the Magdalene Mystery.